Okay, hi, welcome back to, I think we're at tutorial 5 at this point. This is the same setup as last time, it just looks a little bit different. So you've got your resizing numbers up here, which are attached to your clip texts. You've got the refiner clip texts over here. You've got your prompt all hooked up to your various concatenate nodes, which duct tape everything together and make it work. And we've got our buses, 1 and 2, each one for the different models, with base being the top one and refiner being the bottom one. And previously we would have had an empty latent node, which was being sent to a key sampler. But you can delete that if you have it currently, but it's not really needed for this step because we're going to rebuild this thing. So normally you have an empty latent image and it just runs through everything, or you might have a load image node and just runs everything. But there are options available. We don't need to just use the empty latent image. We can go a bit more advanced than that. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to do some maths up here to make these clip text encoders work even better than they do at the moment. So it'll do everything automatically, and you'll only have to type in the number once. And then these are going to become the way that you resize your latent image thing as well. So you just enter the number in one place and it fixes all of these, and it also resizes your starting image as well. All right. So the complicated part about doing maths in ComfyUI is you must use custom nodes. And the thing about custom nodes is they can be hard to get a hold of. So you will need Comfy Manager if you really want to make proper use of ComfyUI. And Comfy Manager is good because it lets you, basically it's over here. It puts itself at the bottom of your Q prompt the floaty thing. And it gives you this menu. And this menu lets you install missing custom nodes. So if you start up someone else's workflow and there's red ones, it can install them from this. It can also install custom nodes. It can find models for you. And it can fetch updates from all of your installed stuff, and it can also update ComfyUI. So it's a very powerful tool, and you should be using it, basically. I'll just give you a look at some of the, so it checks to see if you have a local database, which we don't have. So it's going to then go and open the one from the internet, which has all of these custom nodes in it. And as you can see, there's quite a few. So I would suggest you get this first. And I'm not going to name each node we're using, but featuring prominently is going to be Derfuu's math nodes. Quality of Life Suit by Omar something, and there's almost always a WAS suit node somewhere in here. So anyway, doing maths is kind of fiddly because there's some rules in ComfyUI that mean it doesn't like you using certain kinds of data and just kind of plugging them into different nodes. So I can't plug this into a text node. It's gonna cry. So I have to convert data and from one type into another. And the problem with that is if it expects a certain kind of data and you need to be in one type of data in order to do one thing to it, then it also has to be converted back again. So we have to convert this to a float. Now, if I can remember where it is, I'm just going to type in because there's so many nodes. Float. All right. We did an int to float node. You'll see I actually have more than one option because these nodes are quite common. So an int to float. I change my value to input, which should allow me to plug this into here. So, an interesting thing is this would not, something labeled float would not plug into the front of this. So anyway, so int to float does the process of it removes all the zeros from the end of things. So it's only going to give whole numbers. That's what floats do, which means they're really good for working with resizing images, because you're never going to end up with point something of a pixel, you know what I mean? So convert it to a float, and the reason we're converting it to a float is we can do some maths operations with this. And we have to go to Derfuu's nodes, go to functions, wait, not functions, math, that's what we need. And we're going to use a multiply math node. And this has two inputs, and the inputs are actually float inputs. Like it won't, you can't plug in an int to this. See how they go dark? But you can plug a float into it. So we have to convert this to a float first. And because B doesn't actually need to be that, so it can be a widget, and we're going to set this to 2. So this is going to multiply anything that comes in the front, and it's going to come out the back times 2, basically. So float in, and then if we plug the back end of this, it has to come out as int again, because unfortunately the only data that these width height things will accept is an int. Even though it wants full numbers, like whole numbers, floats, it will only accept ints, because these nodes come from the main ComfyUI, which doesn't actually use floats. It just uses ints for everything, which is very confusing. So anyway, we have to convert it back into an int. So what we need is a float to int. So float to int. Sometimes you put a space here and you won't find it. So be careful about that. Sometimes there's no space. So float to int underscore 0 underscore sorry. And we convert our float to, where is it? Convert float to input. So we are now inputting this number, we're timesing it by 2, and it's coming out this end as an int. And because it is width, it plugs into this width value. And now what we're going to do is we're going to plug this into all of our widths that we can find. So target width and width. Now, if we were using this setup and we were actually doing more advanced stuff with these to focus the image the way that you can do it to make these more useful, you could plug in different maths to it. You could plug in a different value somewhere as well. Or you could just type it into the node if you needed to. But because this needs to be the same one for all of them, we're just going to plug the same value into all of those. And then we're going to minimize them because we don't need them anymore. And because we don't want to have to search through all that stuff again, we're just going to Control-C, Control-V, and we're going to plug the height one in to the front. And then we're going to plug the height one into everything. So the advantage of doing this kind of stuff is it means you don't have to break out a calculator or use your brain, and you can just enter in one single number and it will just do all of this for you, which is amazing. So now we have set up a little math calculation section up here, and a whole bunch of spaghetti now plugs into everything. Make sure these are all hooked up correctly or you will get images that may look funny. But more importantly, when you get to later on, if you're using these numbers, it's gonna be weird. Anyway, so we're going to use these two numbers somewhere else. So we're going to steal them, and oh wait, you can't actually make a reroute node with some of these, so bear that in mind. But we should be able to do a reroute. I just need to have a look for the reroute. Will it allow me to reroute these? It will. yeah, so there's a trick with some of these nodes, which is the default custom ComfyUI nodes are. Some of them work really badly. And one of those is the primitive node, which you get out when you... Yeah, here's one. I could just drag out a primitive node from here. Utility, primitive. So you see this primitive node. It looks fantastic. It's a string. It will do what you want. And it's context sensitive. So what you plug into it is what it gets, which means one of the bad things about it is you can't plug this into another type of node. Like you cannot plug this into other places. You can plug it in to things requiring the exact same kind of data. Like if it's a specific thing like string, or if it's like a resolution or something, it'll work. But if it's like the resolution from like if you had tried to plug in a resolution from a latent image to like an image file, it's gonna laugh at you because it won't do it. And so the reason we don't like these is also because you cannot reroute these things. See, you cannot plug this into a reroute node because it's contextual. It wants that extra information from this node to tell it what it is. And if it can't find that from a reroute node, it's not going to connect, which is frustrating as all heck because these must be directly connected. You cannot organize them. I hate them. I hate them with a passion. But these ones, the ones we are plugging in from our resolution, are fine. You just have to hunt for it, which is annoying. Right, so we have these two here now. And we're going to name them using the method I showed earlier. Hopefully you spotted it, which is we need... I'm assuming the top one's width, but I'm probably wrong. Ha, I guessed it. Right, rename slot height. Right, so we're going to need these ones later, so I might as well just put these over here. Yeah. Right. So now we're going to get to setting up the what I call Predefusion. I'm going to build a complex thing called a Predefusion image loader selector. So essentially, we're going to build a system that allows us to select an input from a series of options that we make, and the output is going to be one of three different things. It'll be either an image to image, it'll be Prediffusion, which is just a sampler hooked up really simply, and it'll be a empty latent, so it'll pull out this at the end as well. So before we do anything else, we're going to hook up this. So convert width to input. This way, when you enter the numbers back here, you're choosing the size of this. So we can use this later as well. All right. So the first part of our input selector is we need to actually get the selection part. And we'll be looking for a switch. And it'll be in a list somewhere, latent switch. Latent switch is part of the impact pack, and it'll be under utilities. There it is, latent switch. Blind. All right. There's some really cool nodes in the impact pack, but it does tend to want to use its own nodes for everything, including like, plugging things. It gets complicated and annoying. I don't like it that much, but we can build with this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to name some labels on this. So we're going to do an empty latent image and plug the empty latent image into this. Then we're going to create a reroute node and rename it to output. So what this will do is you pick the slot with this particular value and it'll choose one of these and it'll pass it to the output, which basically means if you put in the number here, you can pick any number of different sources to come from it. So this is a good way of setting up a multiple workflow kind of system, and then passing things where you want by just like passing the number somewhere. So we're going to hook this up to a switch now. So let's create a convert to input, because we don't want this control to be where this node is. We want it to be back at the start. So we can just pick it all the way over here. Hopefully it will allow us to run a reroute, and it does, which lets us keep everything neat. And we'll rename this to selector or switch, whatever you want to call it, as long as it makes sense to you. And we're going to add a node. It's going to be a constant. Hang on, I'll just do it here. Constant number. Constant number. Oh, maybe not that one. How about we just use it? Can I even use it? This is the, see, I'm investigating how to do this while we do this thing. So will it work? No, it won't. All right. We're going to have to do this with an int then, I think. Maybe I can do a constant float. We'll see. We'll see what we can do. Hang on. All right. Constant stat. No. How about a float? Can I just put in a float? We can just put in a float. No idea what node this is on, but it should allow us to. Nope. What do you want? You want an int, do you? See, there's a problem with data types not being labeled. All right. You want an integer because integers work with everything. Fine. We'll do an integer then. Disconnect you, reconnect you. Right. Okay. We'll do this properly now. We'll do an integer. Integer. Right. There we are. Now, if you're going to do it this way, make sure you just feed in whole numbers. You don't want to try and drag it out and get point values for things. And we want 1. Right. So this will pass the value from this through here. It'll pick one of these slots and it will output what you want. So we'll change this one to source switch, I guess. There we go, source switch. And because we like to do things in an organized way, let's put a note in. They're under utilities, and 1 empty latent. That way, if you ever get amnesia, you'll remember what you actually need to put in there. Right. Okay, so next step we need the second one, and the second one is going to be Predefusion. So Predefusion it's pretty simple. It's just a K sampler, and we're hooking it up to the empty latent image. So we're using that twice, and you can hook this up to the bus, or you can do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to drag out some more stuff over here. Reroute this. I'm going to reroute. Yeah, I'm definitely going to need a van here. So we're not really building a bus. We're building like a minibus. Yeah, we're building a minibus. And this is the entire job of this bit is to essentially just feed this one set of nodes we have here. We're not going to use this on any of the other stuff, just this block of stuff here. So because we have a K sampler, Prediffusion is best done with its own clip text. All right, so we're going to be building a second set of clip text. Now, the reason we run another set of clip text is because we don't use the same prompt for a pre-diffusion. With normal diffusion, you just straight up run everything. And Prediffusion is used specifically because you want more from what you're getting. So you might be getting good images out of your prompt, but it's not quite giving you something. You're not getting the colors you want. You're not getting the shape of the room you want. You're not getting characters in the right places. So what you can do is you can build a very simple sampler, and you can put in a very simple instructions that tell it where you want things. So a grey room with a dark figure center left. Right, so you can do something like that, and we'll just say negative. It doesn't even really need anything negative, but we'll change the colors too. All right, so now we have the case sampler, and the case sampler in Prediffusion is you best to do it a very quick one so it doesn't waste your time when you run it. So we're going to use dim, which is apparently one of the faster samplers, if not the fastest. And we're going to run it at 10 steps because we do not need a perfect image. We just need a rough idea of an image for this particular step. And we're going to put this on fixed for now. It's a good idea to run this with fixed because otherwise it'll generate it every time. Just remember to switch it whenever you happen to need a new kind of starter image. All right, so you don't need to break out a preview image for this. If you do, it will slow down everything. But I'm going to simply because it makes it a bit easier to figure out what we're doing. Fader code. And I'm going to grab you as well. This is generally going to be a bit messier because we're just building like a block for doing stuff. So, all right, and we're using preview node because no one wants to save these images. They're not great. Right. Now, for the third option, we're going to do image to image. So, image to image is done by an image loader. So, image to image. We need a V decoder. No, V encode. That's what I need. And the V encode is going to go to an image load image. Right. So, how do we lay this out in a way that makes sense? How about switch here, output at the end. These can be tiny. We don't need to see those. And load image node can cover up some of these cables. Why not? And yeah, this should be good enough, I think. All right, so this is your image to image thing. You can load things from here. It will load from your hard drive. And ImageNet will send it through here and encode it into this. Now, we're going to do one more thing between the load image and the switch, and that is we're going to resize it. And the reason we're going to do that is images will come in with whatever resolution you use. And so for convenience's sake, and if you're downloading images off the internet, you can't really control what resolution they are, but you can resize them in here, which makes them more controllable. So we're going to put in an upscale, image upscale. Where are we? I can't remember what it's called. We'll do it the old way. All right, add node, image upscaling, upscale image. Right. And the reason we use the one where we directly tell it the resolution is because we're going to steal the resolution from back here again. Height and width. And our height is going into here. And our width is going into here. This way, everything comes out this output at the same resolution. And now we plug this in between the loader and the V. And this can go here. And we'll put this over here. and minimize it because, yeah, maybe here. Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. So this kind of set of nodes here looks confusing as all hell, but the only controls that you actually control this whole section with are back here with the switch, the width and height. And that will allow you to just control the entire thingo that goes into the rest of your workflow. So we're going to plug this in now and I'll show you how it works. The first thing we're going to run, it's going to be an empty latent image and it's going to come out at 1536 by 768. The number that gets put into these is going to be double that, which gives us some better resolution and better sharpness and features in the final image. At least that's the theory as I understand it. And so that we can actually see what the image is going to be, we're going to plug these things in. Oh yeah, by the way, this VE here, which comes out from the base, can actually plug into K samplers that come from the refiner. But if you had a like a 1.5 model on your second bus, you want to make sure that you are breaking it out into VE decodes between stages so that you don't get this latent thing messed up. It'll make images like that where it's all messed up if it's got the wrong VE attached to it. Right. Let's see if I've plugged everything in or if it's going to break. There we go. I have failed to plug in the model because I am crap at this game. Revert. And let's give it a model. One mistake. It's fine. It's fine. And because this is done, we're going to shift it over here. And I'm going to do one final thing to it, and we're going to put it in a group. So groups are good because it lets you just select everything by dragging it from the top. Unfortunately, you can't just select the group and then save it for later. I'll show you a trick to do with saving nodes as a group in a bit as well. Maybe next lesson we'll show you how to do that. It's not hard. All right. So now we'll output, and first it's going to load very quickly. It's going to generate this, which is it's just a room, basic room. It's tried to do a figure, but instead it's turned it into a door. And I have apparently failed to plug in this VE as well because there's always something wrong. Okay, we'll try it again. All right, now it's going to encode. It's gone through, and where is it now? Where's it working now? It is not going to tell me. Oh, there it is. It was going back to check out the refiner. I'm confused. There we go. I found it. I found it. It's funny when it starts jumping all over the place with the green outlines and you just lose where it is. All right, so it hasn't used this actual image here because we haven't switched the switch to use Predefusion. Instead, it's using the top one because it's set to 1. So this is just basically generating the image that you would get with the main prompt by itself with no additional options set to it. And as you can see, it's kind of wonky when you look right at it. So let's go and grab Prediffusion. We'll go to 2 now. Yes. Now, because we're using advanced K samplers, the thing about advanced K samplers is they don't have a denoising value like a normal sampler will. Instead, you control that with the start at step. And the start at step is like if you set 30 steps was 100%, then doing the maths, 8 steps out of 30 is going to be how many percent your denoiser would be at, roughly. And I suck at math, so I'm just eyeballing it and putting it at 9 at the moment. So now we get to see how much of this image it's going to use. And as you can see, it's put a person in there. It's used the shape of the room. It's added details to it from my other prompt. So you can see how powerful running a little diffusion beforehand can actually be to an image in order to make it look completely different and in many ways better and even closer to the prompt that you want. And when you zoom right in, it looks terrible, but that's what more steps and more samplers and upscaling and face fixes and stuff, which I'll teach you guys later. That's what that stuff's to fix. Because one of the things Stable Diffusion is bad at is people at this distance from the camera, their faces are terrible. Like, you've all seen the waifu with the pretty faces and everything, and they'll be perfect because they're, you know, a dime a dozen is an image that's up that portrait size and perfect, right? But getting faces this far away to look good is really tough. And I'll eventually show you how to do that. I've recently been teaching myself how to do that, and it's a bit of a job, but once you've got it, you can get some really cool images out of this. All right, so that's that step. Let's show you what image to image does. And so we'll switch it to 3, which is the third option. Hang on, while I'm here. Let's populate these. And image to image. Now, usefully, this has an extra slot. So if you do come up with some other process that you want to run through this, like if you want to run a different set of samplers or different prompts or whatever through this, it can do that. In fact, you could even bypass these and use your main prompt if you want to do it. It's not going to be as good, but you can do that if you're being very lazy. All right, so using this now, it should just render these using that image. And as before, it's using this kind of denoising step to do the job. So depending on this value, it's going to have different results in here. But as you can see, it's used part of that image. It's used, you can see the lights and the floor, but it's also added some dark figures, because the dark figures, although there's some in this prompt, it's no longer using this to make those images. Instead, it's using this prompt, which has 2 men wearing survival gear exploring. And yes, I was using this to make Backrooms images, if anyone knows what that is. All right, so as you can see, it hasn't made a photo because it doesn't have like enough information in this image like to work with. It doesn't have enough, like if you look at this, it's very smooth, very kind of, but if you look at this one, there's kind of a subtle multicolored noise in this, which gives a little more to grab onto and change. But if we bring this down a few steps and we run it again, it should use more of our prompt on this. I have shown before how to get this image preview as well, and I may as well show again just in case anyone's missed it. But if you go into your ComfyUI and go to your bat file, which runs ComfyUI, and you add this one line here, dash preview dash method space auto, and you put that on the end, it'll run those live previews for you. Right, so this has done another thing. It's doing the same thing with the limited colors. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to try and fix this stuff. I'm not going to go into it, but sometimes it just does not want to make photos, no matter what you do. Usually it's fixable with just minor tweaks to the prompt. And like, maybe if I give it even less of the rear image, let's give it like 3 and just see what it does. there's a lot of this that comes into this is with a lot of stuff with samplers and stuff like that. Plus, SDXL has trouble with image to image. For some reason, it's okay with something like the Predefusion stuff that I do, but it's not as good at the whole image to image process. I'm not quite sure why. So as you can see, it's making vector art for some unknown reason. It seems to be generally ignoring the prompt up here. And I'll just vector. All right, so vector is now in that, so maybe it'll fix it. It probably won't, but anyway, so that is how you build your starting block or your selectable starting kind of block. It'll let you do all that kind of stuff, and it's quite a potent tool to have. And I've also shown you how to do some maths for this stuff to do more advanced things, to save you time doing things, and hopefully that gives you some more confidence to just get out there and have a try at doing more complicated stuff than you might normally do. Like, this stuff is relatively easy if you just use the skills you already have and just explore to see what different nodes can do different things. And you can build some really amazing processes. The next tutorial I do is probably going to be, I'll do upscaling and maybe face fixes. These videos tend to come out really long, but because I ramble and I like to go into depth on things. Sometimes everything just fights you, doesn't it? It will not give me a good image out of these either. I'm sure there's something I could do, but anyway, there will be more tutorials coming out soon. Let me know on Reddit or YouTube if you've got questions. It won't let me link the workflow into YouTube, unfortunately, because I'm not verified or whatever. But anyway, if you can find me in the ComfyUI Reddit, you should be able to find the workflow relatively easy. Anyway, thanks for watching and make some cool stuff.